if you just have that one question, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? You automatically eliminate half of the ag tech companies just right away. Because a lot of them, they really don't know what problems they're trying to solve.
Coming up on The Modern Acre, we're talking to one of the most innovative farmers in California who probably knows more about agronomy and ag tech than most ag tech companies out there.
The Modern Acre podcast explores the latest in business, investing, technology, and sustainability in agriculture, and we're your hosts, Tyler and Tim Nuss. The Modern Acre podcast is presented by Pinion. The economics of farming are increasingly difficult, and many producers are asking Pinion, the leading food and ag business advisory firm, questions around thin margins and cash flow. Farmers want to know how to calculate the total cost of running the business and determine their farm's true break-even. The answer is twofold. First, calculating beyond the field is critical. Second, ensure you know your true costs. If you're struggling with this, Pinion advisors can perform financial calculations that identify places to cut expenses and ways to optimize your farm business. Learn more at pinionglobal.com or hit the link in our show notes. All right, Tim, before we jump in, I'm super excited for this conversation with Zac. Guys, going to make a pitch here for the Modern Acre Co-op. So the Modern Acre Co-op is our membership community. It's been long-standing. There's been, ups and downs. It's been a roller coaster building out a membership community, but we are so thrilled with the community we have of really builders in agriculture. That's the easiest way to explain it. People that are either in ag tech companies, innovative farmers, people that are just building stuff, that are entrepreneurial. That's really the ethos of the group. And what we do in the Modern Acre Co-op is we meet about every other month or so. We also, Tim and I will share exclusive audio content with the co-op so they get access to additional podcast episodes on their own private feed. There's discounts on our merch. We've got a sweet Modern Acre t-shirt. It's the best, and it's a way that you can support us. We just put out a exclusive audio content all about how did we land the David Friedberg interview and how did that all come to be, some of our takeaways from that interview. So if you want to hear that, the details behind that, subscribe to the Modern Acre Co-op. There's a way for you to subscribe monthly, annually, and get a discount, or become a lifetime member. So check it out. It's at the link in the show notes. We'd really appreciate you listening. We're going to have a fresh members call very soon. So sign up now so you can attend the next members call on the Modern Acre Co-op.
Ty, I am pumped for this week's conversation with Zac Ellis, who's the Senior Director of Agronomy with Olam Food Ingredients. Zac and I have been friends for 5+ years now, got connected. Zac's probably one of the most well-respected guys in California almonds. He's worked in it his entire career, and he understands the agronomic side and ag tech side of it better than most people that we've spoken with. He's just a wealth of information, so it's fun to finally get him on the pod. We've been friends for a while, and we're able to chop it up and talk on the pod. Zac leads Olam's almond farming division, so he kind of covers the entire crop from the agronomic side through to harvest, really understanding the full supply chain of almonds that Olam processes. Olam's a very large company. There are a lot of different food ingredients and food products, but he handles kind of the division that focuses on almonds, working end to end on the growing side through to CPG brands that are buying almond products from Olam.
Yeah, Olam is a massive player in the space. So cool to hear his perspective as a farmer on the ground who knows agronomy, knows ag tech, but is working as part of this larger ecosystem with Olam. Tim, this is a perfect example of one of those interviews that I know this is part one. There's going to be a part two at some point, and it was just great to catch up with him and learn more. So you guys are going to love it. We're going to jump in with what's top of mind for Zac.
Oh man, there's so many things at the top of my mind right now. But from an ag perspective and my career, it's top of mind for me is the old adage that my dad taught me years ago, and that still holds true. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I've really been scrutinizing how we measure things in the field and how we make these big decisions based on this information that's very vague or ambiguous. And so really trying to understand how we can measure things more effectively so that I can manage things more successfully. And that's always at the top of my mind and will continue to be so, I think, probably until I die.
It's a super important thing in agriculture that is just tough for a lot of farming operations, right? For a smaller farming operation, a lot of it's made on gut instinct, historical experience, and not so much on data, right? Because for a variety of reasons, if they don't have access to the data, they don't know how to find it, how to pull insights from it. So it's definitely something that I think is really crucial in agriculture, but is something that more and more farmers are moving in the direction of really leveraging technology, leveraging data to inform the decisions that they're making.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that in the past, this is such a cool time in agriculture because, it's not that I've had a lack of data the last 10 years I've been doing agronomy in almonds. I've always had a lot of data. I just haven't had the ability to really do anything with it. And I haven't really understood how important the method of sampling and measurement can be, and the variability that can happen within even just measuring something. Where you measure it, when you measure it, how you measure it, all those things are super important. But if you nail all those things and you have all this data, it still isn't very effective as an agronomist just to have all this data. So, now having a plethora of it, but also seeing this huge evolution in machine learning technology and in artificial intelligence, we're really starting to leverage that and get all this data that we've been collecting over the last 10 years and training these algorithms and these models and coming up with really, really interesting things that honestly, I don't think I would have ever been able to come up with without that little AI black box, whatever it does. It's just been really, really cool to see how we can gather all that data and then really bring actionable items to the field through sound analysis. But that's really opened my eyes up to how do we sample these things and where do we sample and really how do we develop critical values around these different things that we're spending millions of dollars a year in trying to ameliorate without really having good sound data.
Super interesting and excited to dig into all the technologies that you're exploring and trialing. But before we get into all that, Zac, maybe just fill us in a little bit about your background and what led you into agriculture and your work at Olam.
Yes, it's been a long ride. I grew up in the Central Valley in a place called Corcoran, California. And for anyone who doesn't know where that's at, I don't blame you, but it is between Fresno and Bakersfield. It's known for two things, the Corcoran State Penitentiary and J.G. Boswell, where all the cotton is grown in the Central Valley. So I grew up there on a dairy. It was actually a dairy replacement feed yard. So we would get cattle at 350 pounds or so. We would raise them up till they were, 500-600 pounds. We would have them bred either artificially or with bulls. And then we would bring those cattle up all the way up until about 8 months of their pregnancy and then sell them as replacement cattle for dairies, just to kind of refreshen their herd. And so we really, every morning I would get up in the morning early and feed cows and go to school and come back and feed cows and get up again and feed cows. And man, I was just so sick of those cows that one day I came to my dad when I was like 15 years old, maybe 16, and said, "Dad, I can't handle it anymore. I don't ever want to see a cow again. I don't want to smell silage. Like, is there anything else that I can do on the ranch to be productive that doesn't include any kind of animal?" And luckily, my dad had some old, I'll back up. We farmed our own feed when we had the dairy replacement feed yard. But he had just 60 acres and he'd heard of these almond trees that, may be lucrative in the future. And so he planted them really not knowing what he was doing. They looked terrible when I got there and started managing them. But he said, "Hey, if you want it, go manage that 60 acres of almonds and let's see what you can do." And I never looked back again. I thought, this is my ticket away from those cows. It's in the shade. I don't like the sun a whole lot. So this is going to work out great. And from there, I really fell in love with agronomy and fertility and plant physiology, soil science. Just every time I found a new avenue within agronomy, I was like, wow, this is even cooler than what I thought was cool before, and I loved it so much. I went to school for it. I've become hyper focused in pomology and more specifically almond production. And that's really where I've kind of led my North Star when it came to my career as I developed out of college and into the real world.
It's good to hear that the cows didn't scare you away from agriculture broadly. You just, pivoted to a different area of agriculture. I was the kid that I was just like, I'm out. I'm out of the ag industry completely. I don't want anywhere near it for all the odd jobs and hard work that I had to deal with as a kid.
Yeah, it almost did. If it wasn't for my dad having those scrangy looking almonds that he had, I don't think I would have ever got into agriculture. And I'm really glad that I did, because it's been a very, very fulfilling career, and I'm still as excited, if not more, every day when I get up to go to work. And I kind of had an epiphany on it probably about a year ago, because I was really having trouble. Very busy guy, just like all of us. But I was having trouble with like the days of the week, and I was getting, I love the weekends, and the weekends are great, but I would always look forward to going to work. Like, it was never something like, oh, got the Sunday scaries, I've got to go back to work on Monday, this is going to be terrible. I've always been very excited about going to work and doing what I do. And, not that I don't like to hang out on the weekends and relax, but I think it's a really rare thing when you don't have that feeling of anxiety or stress or anything like that when you think about your job, and that's really I think unique and something that I'm very appreciative of.
No, that is super unique, super cool. So, I mean, Zac, take us up to present day. How did you ultimately go from school to where you're at with Olam and your role there?
I went to school and studied ag business. My senior project at Cal Poly was it was an old foliar product that my dad had developed in the 70s, and he kept the registration for. It's for cotton that he'd used on the west side. It was a 728 NPK, had some zinc and some humic in it. Special in the 70s, but not very special, in present day. Pretty typical. But I developed a business plan and a marketing plan around that. And then after school, one of my roommates, who's also an ag, and his family's an ag, we were talking one night, and we just, had a few beers, and we said, hey, why don't we do this? Like, why don't we actually start a business and see what we can do? And so we did. Started out as like a foliar fertilizer company, and then kind of evolved into a more custom tailored crop fertility and agronomy company, where we would, either take or just read any soil and tissue and water analysis that were available, and then develop custom blends at toll blenders. The one that we would use is RNA Manufacturing over on the west side, and build these custom blends for growers and have kind of a custom program based on their specific situation. And it was really cool. I met a million growers all over the valley. I was the truck driver, the agronomist, the janitor, the secretary. We learned everything, and it was really, really fun and a great experience. But eventually, my business partner and I, we were kind of just going different directions in life, and I was a little bit more on the science side, and he was a little bit more on the big picture side, the sales and acquisitions and stuff. And I just felt like I wanted to do something different. So we decided to dissolve the company and move forward in ag, but just doing other things. And I went to work for a specialty ag fertilizer company that dealt with humic acid, a company called AgTech. And I went to work there and moved up to Lodi, California for that job. And I had met my former boss. His name was Kaushal Khanna, and he was at OFI at the time. He was the senior VP of farming. And he had convinced me to do a trial with them as an AgTech rep. And he said, hey, I'll give you 200 acres. There's 3 other fertilizer reps. They have 200 acres each. You can do whatever you want to those acres. At the end of 2 years, whoever can give me the highest yields or the most profitability wins. I said, okay, well, that's perfect. This is a really good opportunity. I put a program together, implemented it for 2 years, thought it was pretty successful, and then got called into the office by Kaushal one day, and he looked at me and he said, okay, well, we had the results. Your plot did 25% better than every other plot. Then he looked at me and he goes, but I'm curious. I look at your program and I only see 2 of your products on this program. And, I see some of your competitors' products on here. I see some commodity products on here. Like, what's going on here? And I said, well, you said you wanted me to win. If I won, I got all the acres. So I looked at all the products very objectively. And if they had a better product, then I used it. And, I think these 2 products that I used were more superior. But, at the end of the day, I wanted to win. And he looked at me and he goes, man, you're a terrible salesman, but you're a really good agronomist. And I said, well, thank you, I think. And he goes, well, why don't you come work for us? And I said, wow, I guess I never really thought about getting on the production side. I've always been thrilled with sales and, the glitz and glamour of being a salesman in ag. And it was fun. But, this was a real challenge for me, and I decided to accept it. And so he hired me, and that was 2015. And I was a technical services manager, which was really just a way of saying I was the guy that kind of handled all the new AgTech within the company. And then from there, we had some really good success with some of the AgTech that I implemented. And he said, okay, why don't you just do all the agronomy, including the AgTech, but also fertility, pest and disease, water, the whole bit. We've made some huge changes since I've been here, and we've been very successful in implementing ag tech and really being pragmatic on our approach and having a strategy and really trying to address a problem and not just trying to use cool tech because it's cool tech. And then from there, moved to senior director of agronomy about a couple years ago, where now I not only do my job, but I also travel globally to different business units that Olam owns. And give agronomy advice as a kind of an outsider who has a lot of experience in ag tech, and really try to match any ag tech that I'm aware of to the problems that are on the ground for whatever business unit. So, I've been to Malaysia, I've been to Cambodia, Vietnam, Portugal, Australia, Singapore, all over the place, really trying to help the company by just being having a different perspective and really having a lot of experience in the ag tech world. And so it's been really, really cool. And now the new frontier for me is sustainability. And that's kind of the newest thing that really has driven some value proposition lately. And hopefully we can get into that a little bit more later.
No, what an awesome story and journey you've had. And I think that's a really unique perspective of like the best agronomic decision for a farm might not all come from one vendor. So sometimes farmers are just aligned with one ag retailer and they're suggesting just this list of products that's in their portfolio, and the best option for that grower might be products outside their portfolio. And having an unbiased, like independent voice is super needed, but I don't think it exists in a lot of operations. So it's cool that you were able to bring that within Olam and have kind of that unbiased view of how to select the best products based on what the crops need, not based on the vendor of choice. Zac, would love to dig into the ag tech piece. You obviously look at a lot of ag tech. You said some of it is kind of the shiny objects that might not work. Some of the stuff you're actually using in practice. Like, how do you assess that? Being a big operation, I'm sure companies are coming after you constantly. How do you kind of triage ag tech and like where you want to invest your time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. It's such a big part of my job, a much bigger part of my job than I thought it would be. And, there's times where I hate it because I'm getting inundated with new tech and I feel overwhelmed. Or at least felt overwhelmed at first, but kind of have developed a bit of a strategy on how I can vet some of these companies and understand what they're trying to do. I left out when we were talking about getting to present day. I've had a huge opportunity that Olam has given me. They decided that they wanted to invest back into me. I had asked them about a year and a half ago, call it a midlife crisis or whatever you want to call it. But I thought, man, I really want to go back to school again. I already have my master's degree in plant science, but I'm working with all these researchers and professors from USDA, UC Davis, all over the place, and I just had this itch. And so I asked Olam if they would entertain possibly supporting me to go back to school. And They said yes, which is amazing because they not only said yes, but they have also said that they're going to pay for the whole thing, to sponsor me for the whole thing. So what's really cool now is because I'm going back to school at UC Davis and I'm getting a PhD in agronomy and horticulture, I am surrounded by some of the smartest people on the planet. And now I really have a good way of vetting because I have all of these other professors that aren't agronomists, but they're very, very specialized and have a huge amount of knowledge on specific things. And when an ag tech company comes to me now, I simply get to figure out which professor is going to have the most experience in this type of ag tech and then get another opinion that's well informed to really tell me, whether this is something we should really be pursuing or if there's some other unforeseen issues that we hadn't really looked at. Before I had that opportunity to do that, it's all about data and it's all about good experimental design. And so my main litmus test when someone comes to me and says, hey, I've got a product or I've got a technology that I want you to use, I want to see like the statistics behind it. I want to see the real data. I want to see what is going to propel us forward in a meaningful way and to solve a problem. And what is that problem? And funny enough, if you just have that one question, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? You automatically eliminate half of the ag tech companies just right away. Because a lot of them, they really don't know what problems they're trying to solve. They have a really cool piece of technology and they think that it may be helpful, but they haven't done the real due diligence to see if that problem really is a systemic issue that needs to be addressed or if it's just some kind of ancillary issue or byproduct that really doesn't cause a whole lot of ripple in the operation. So once we kind of understand what problem they're trying to address, then a lot of it comes down to where are you in your journey of developing this product, and how far have you gone, and the last thing that we want to do, and we've done this before, is be the research and development orchard for a company that we're paying a commercialized product for. And that's happened a lot where, they tell us, hey, we have this product, we have this technology, it's great. We love it. So we say, okay, let's deploy it. We go to deploy it. And we realize at some point within that journey of getting it into the field and executing on it that they really don't have the product done yet, that they're still doing R&D on it, and that they need more data to train on, and that we're essentially paying for them to try to develop their product further. So that's been a real challenge, but also really rewarding when you find good ag tech. And that's probably, there's several ag tech companies out there that we've come across that, man, it's just so rewarding to see proper execution and scaling of some of these different pieces of ag tech that we use.
What have been some of those examples of successful ad tech that you've experienced?
Yeah, there's a ton of them. I'll start with one that we've fully implemented that we've had really a lot of success with over a multitude of years. That would be a company called Phytech. So Phytech is an irrigation company, irrigation monitoring company. They use dendrometer technology, which is measuring the shrinking and the swelling of the trunk of the tree. And if you think of the trunk of the tree as like a straw, when the sun's out and transpiration and photosynthesis is happening, there's some suction on that straw. And just like if you sucked on a straw in a milkshake, that straw is going to contract a little bit and get a little bit smaller. And then when you've had your fill, when you're done with your milkshake or when the sun sets, then that trunk is going to go back to its normal state and there's going to be an expansion. And the difference between that contraction and expansion is pretty highly correlated with stem water potential and gives us a really, really good understanding of not what the soil moisture is or what the humidity is, but what is the plant feeling right now from a stress perspective. How thirsty is that plant? Let's give that plant a Fitbit and see what's going on from a data perspective with those trees. And we love that technology. We thought it was really cool 7 years ago when we started. And Phytech is one of those companies that they keep evolving, they keep innovating, and every year they come to me with some other idea, and it's always one of those, wow, we could really use that. That's actually a huge problem. I'm really happy that you came to me with this. So that's a really good example of like a big success. Another one would be, and this is kind of a newer one, but like I said in the beginning, what's on my mind? You can't measure it. You can't manage it. There's a company called LandScan. And LandScan is this really new advanced technology, and they are able to do a ton of different things with basically creating a digital twin of not only the above ground biomass of the orchard, the canopy height or the volume or whatever, and not only the spectral component, so NDVI, NDRE, all the different reflectance components, that's pretty well known, but they also can do what's called the DSC, the digital soil core. And what this does, it's so cool. They've developed this probe that can do, it's got 7 different sensors in it, and one of those sensors is a spectrometer, so they can do in-field soil testing as they go down the profile. So if you think about how do you soil test now, you go out with a probe, you pull a column of soil out, you put it in a bucket, you do that several times until you have enough and it's composited at that depth, and then you homogenize it, you send it off to the lab, the lab grinds it up, they bake it, and then they use these different extractions and then do the spectroscopy that you need to do to figure out what's in the soil. Well, you can imagine how much disturbance that is within the soil system. I mean, you've disaggregated the soil, you've dried it all out, there's no more microorganism, there's really nothing that is similar to what it was in the soil other than some of the nutrients. And even some of those aren't fully accurate because of the way that they're prepared or the way that they're extracted. So really seeing what is the real-time in situ nutrient status and soil and permeability status within your profile has been huge. And then they also do other things. They have a penetrometer, so we can look at depth to root restricting layers. They have a moisture sensor, so we can see what kind of volumetric water content the soil can hold. They even have a high resolution camera, so you can actually see the column of soil as you're moving down with the probe. And again, like I said with AI, normally a nice picture is a nice picture of soil, right? What am I going to do with that? But now you have all of these different videos and pictures of this soil. You can train that machine learning algorithm to start picking up on things, subtle things that the human eye could never even pick up on. And so now we're starting to see some really cool things with using variable rate technology and smart sampling technology, and just creating this soil characterization that I've never seen before until I had met the folks at LandScan. And I think they have something that's really going to change the game in terms of how we measure in agronomy and what we do with those measurements.
Want to dig into sustainability. You mentioned this being a new focus area for you and your role at Olam. I think regenerative agriculture, climate smart agriculture has been making a lot of headlines the past couple of years. How do you think about that at Olam? And are you getting pushed by your customers or by the company? How do you think about moving in this direction?
I love sustainability. I think sustainability should be on the forefront of everyone's mind, no matter what you're farming or where you're farming. Sustainability is really combining old practices and new practices and sprinkling a little bit of technology in there to develop a way that we can sustainably use resources in a way that is additive to the environment and not detrimental. And we have been working with different sustainability practices since I started at Olam. We were one of the first to start doing trials with different cover crop mixes for the Xerces Society to really try to understand what mix is a good mix for the Central Valley for them to start to deploy. And then from there, we've done all other kinds of things, whether it's compost or biochar or a million different sustainability initiatives that we've done over the years. But every time we go to our strategic partners, they love sustainability, but they don't want to pay for it. Everyone wants the sustainability story and they love the idea of it. But up until about 2 years ago, we could not get any of our CPGs or strategic partners to pay any kind of premium for us to do these sustainable practices. And 2 years ago, that changed when Kind Bar came to us and said, look, we know you're doing a lot of good sustainability stuff, but we want to see what happens when we stack those different sustainability or regenerative practices together on the same field. and really try to understand what combinations of those practices are going to be of highest and best use for us. And so they said, look, we don't even want to develop a KPI. We don't want any like goals of that you're going to reduce emissions or sequester carbon or anything like that. We just simply want you guys to do the experimentation, get good data, and really lead the charge on how we can develop a program that not only OFI can do, but also other growers within the Central Valley. And that's been really, really fun because now we have some financial backing. We have some clout, with my boss's boss's boss. They see that and they say, wow, not only are we developing a sustainability program, but, more importantly, we're developing a program that can be scaled across the entirety of the valley and that just strengthens our relationships with those CPGs that think sustainability is important. And so what we've done is called the Kind Almond Acres Initiative. It was an initiative that started about a year and a half ago. And it's essentially what I was saying. We've taken 7 different practices that are considered sustainable or regenerative, and we've stacked them in different ways on commercial fields. So we're talking 80, 90 acre plots, not 2 acre plots. And we've done all different types of measurements, right? We've done remote sensing, we've done soil organic carbon to nitrogen. We've used land scan, traditional soil testing and tissue testing. We've just done a ton of stuff to really try to measure what the effect of these different practices are. And I think that, for me, has been extremely rewarding and extremely frustrating at the same time. Because we've done these things and we've had some expectations of what we thought was going to be the best combination. And as it always is, it doesn't come out that easily. So, we're learning a lot. We haven't gotten it nailed yet, but I think that, in the next few years, we're really going to be able to hone in on what does a real sustainable orchard or farm look like, and how do we create value from that from our customers so that we can continue to do these things. And, some of them, and this may be one of my contrarian opinions, but I have another one as well. But, some of them may not result in an increase in yield or ROI for the grower. Some of it may be that it's just better for Mother Earth. And it's going to cost more, though. So I think we really need to have some of those frank conversations and everyone needs to get on the same page of what they define sustainability as, and how do we develop ways of implementing sustainable practices in a way that works for the small grower and the big grower, and that can be scaled and commercialized. Because a lot of the time, the research is great, but the moment that you try to do those things that they did in those small plots on big orchards, on big fields, it doesn't work. The timing's off, the operational logistics doesn't work. It's too expensive because there's a whole lot of labor involved. So with this Kind Almond Acres initiative, it's been fun because, we're learning from a scientific perspective, but we're also learning from an operational perspective because we have large plots of these trials going on, and we can really see how does it affect, a great example is, we worked with subsurface irrigation for 3 years before we did this Kind Almond Acres initiative, and it seemed to work out really easily. But that was like a 2 acre trial. So last year we put on 80 acres of subsurface irrigation. And let me tell you, it is a way different game when you have a lot of acres and pocket gophers and squirrels and coyotes eating at it. And just every time you turn around, there's something else trying to nibble on those lines. So, we've learned a lot from that. And I don't think we would have ever learned those lessons if we had not tried to commercialize it at the same time that we're doing the research and development.
Man, so much good stuff. I feel like we could go another half hour. I think I think we need to bring you back on just to talk about some of the lessons that you get from this kind initiative. I think is super, super interesting. But I'm going to table that and ask the final question of you alluded to it. What's your other ag hot take?
My contrarian opinion that organic production, organic farming is worse for society than it is better. And that is a complete waste of time. That's my contrarian opinion. And I tell you what, I'm not saying that all organic practices are bad. I'm saying organic farming is bad. And the reason I say that is because we have 3,300 acres of organic almonds, and we've also learned a lot with that. And we found some really cool strategies through the organic farming that we've brought to conventional farming, and it's been very complementary. But if you still can't use some things that are considered inorganic, you just lose so much production. There's such an emissions factor, carbon footprint increase as well. You're not really going to be able to feed the world with a 20 to 30 to 40% reduction in yields. It just doesn't seem. I don't understand why it's so popular, and I guess maybe because I have a different perspective, and most people are thinking I don't want pesticides in my food, but it's so much more than that. And I think that there could be a really good marriage between sustainability and organic that would give us what we need from that organic perspective of having clean food and feeling good about what we're eating, but also being able to increase production and be more efficient with our inputs. Then that's really where organic just falls flat on its face.
That's a great place to end it. Really good thoughts on that, Zac. As we wrap up, how can our listeners get in touch and connect with you and Olam?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at zac.ellis, zac.ellis@ofi.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Zachary Ellis, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or entertain any ideas.
So, Tim, what'd you think?
There was a lot that we got into, but it was really interesting hearing him talk about kind of sustainable, regenerative, and organic in their production systems and how there's trade-offs for these various programs. And I think Zac just has a really level-headed approach on how to address that challenge, where he admittedly said like the organic is kind of challenging for them, but on the upside, their regenerative trials that they're doing with Kind Bar have been super promising, being able to stack principles and kind of de-risk on the production side, implementing these various practices. So it's cool to see a company with a scale like Olam actually kind of prove out the concept of some of this that other almond farmers can adopt in the future. And I think we need this for every crop category, where there's not a silver bullet or a fully baked solution for a lot of the things that are talked about on Twitter and LinkedIn, and having companies and people like Zac that are willing to put in the time and the effort to actually build that blueprint is critical.
I loved having him on right after talking to Friedberg, right, about like some of these opinions and positions people take within agriculture and specifically around sustainability, right? I think his approach is very data-driven, nuanced, level-headed, like you mentioned, and I think it was a great follow-up to having David Friedberg on. Hey, if you're interested in how we landed David Friedberg on the pod, it wasn't, the snap of our fingers, right? There was a lot of work put in to ultimately get him on the podcast. We get into all those details over on the Modern Acre Co-op, our membership community. You can access exclusive audio to hear things like how we got Friedberg on the podcast and to meet with other builders in agriculture. So check it out, the Modern Acre Co-op. The link is in the show notes. Sign up. You can sign up monthly and see if it's for you and cancel if it's not. Or you can become Tim's new best friend and become a lifetime member. So check it all out at the link in the show notes, and we'll talk to you guys next week.